Hello, good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Roberto Cascella, and it's good morning, everyone. I'm Roberto Cascella. It's my pleasure to introduce this webinar. It's the first series of webinar of the EXO activities on standardization and certification. With me today, there will be two excellent speakers that have been co-editors of the EXO Working Group 1 on system security and certification considerations, so Jean-Michel Brun and Mario Jardim. I will quickly give you some information about EXO as an association, as some of you may not know what EXO is. So we were created like in 2016 as a public-private partnership with the European Commission on cybersecurity. And still today, EXO positions itself as an obvious partner of the Commission with respect to all the activities in Europe linked to cybersecurity, and also that will lead also to the creation of the European Cybersecurity Competence Center. So we have more than 260 members in EXO at the moment. So, and then thanks also with all the different associations that are members of EXO, we reach more than 2,000 organizations in Europe. In terms of vision, so we support the importance of creating and achieving a cyber-resilient digital Europe. As such, also increase European digital sovereignty and strategic autonomy. So one important objective that also we face within EXO Working Group 1 is the establishment of trusted and resilient supply chains for cybersecurity solutions and services. We to address with respect to this vision, so we have three main pillar actions. So the first one is creation of a network, so the creation of a community in Europe. So clearly also to support the activity of the European Commission, so with respect to all the implementation of policies, and this also this is linked to the European cybersecurity certification schemes that are defined by ENISA. And also we have a set of concrete actions that we are implementing, in particular to support the market in Europe, also linked all to different cybersecurity activities. So we have 6 working group that focus on the different aspects. So you can see on the bottom part of the wheel. So here we have the working group focus on the research and innovation, working group on standardization, certification, and the supply chain management, market and regional aspect as well, and also training, awareness, and cyber ranges. And finally, we have also a group focusing more on the users and understanding of the requirements of the different operators. Specifically today, so we will tackle more activities of the EXO Working Group 1, dealing with standardization, certification, and supply chain management. So here, as I mentioned already before, so one important aspect is to support the policy implementation, and this is also linked to the rollout of the European ICT cybersecurity certification schemes, including all the different standards defined by the European SDOs, and also the legislative recommendations that we have in Europe. So the objective at the end, it will be really to establish this trusted and resilient supply chain, and this is linked to the need of digital autonomy and sovereignty also in Europe. So we work in 2 aspects. So on one hand, we define methodologies and approaches. So the objective is to really provide guidelines and recommendations to all the different organizations with respect to cybersecurity certification schemes, but also how to deal with policy initiatives. And on the other hand, so we cooperate with all the different stakeholders in Europe. So I already mentioned European SDOs, Sensale and ETSI, but also ENISA, European Commission, and so on. So we look at clearly all the needs of the market, and then important pillar to establish this ecosystem in Europe. So what I would say, at last is that EXO really is playing an important role in cooperating with all the different stakeholders, also thanks to all the members that we have in the EXO Working Group 1, spanning from RTOs, end user, cybersecurity solution providers, certifiers, manufacturers, and so on. So that, and as such, has gained recognition and is frequently solicited by European institutions for recommendation and advice. Without further ado, so I will move to the main part of this webinar. So we will have like a 30 minutes presentation from Jean-Michel Brun and then Mario Jardim. And then after that, we will have a session linked to the, well, more question from your side that you can type in the chat, and then also with my colleague Sarah Wicks that is supporting this webinar, we will convey this question to the speakers. So I thank you so far for your attention, and I give the floor to Jean-Michel and Mario, please.
Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Mario Jardim speaking. We are going to start, and to start this webinar, I would like just to give you an introduction on what are the objectives of this document that we wrote that is related to system security and the relevant certification aspects. So, Robert, if you can, please move to the next slide. So we were discussing systems for quite a while and the security aspects of it. So it seems that there was a lot of different comprehensions. So we wanted to make sure that we have a shared view of what is at stake and the different needs. So we wanted to make sure that we created a document that provides all the information and considerations on the particularities that make cybersecurity of a system a special case. So we wanted to point out the differences and what makes it special and what are the key points to consider and what are the challenging aspects related to conceiving systems for different types of use. So we try to do this document in the most generic way and try to list at least all the major key items that we found out during the different working group meetings. So to do that, we try to describe the thinking process, what is needed to conceive, what are the phases of the system life cycle. So try to break it down, what are the different points of attention, what are the stakeholders that are at place at each time, and more important, how this risk is managed when you are changing hands from design to the commissioning. So really to bring in a broader perspective of what systems is all about, how it's conceived, how it's implemented, how is it deployed, how it's maintained, and ultimately how is it decommissioned. So we want to cover the entire process by giving to the reader of the document some insights about this. So we started with something that to us it was really the starting point, which is the high-level risk assessment that will give the right perimeter of risk that this system will be inserted into, and will give all the right parameters for the subsequent actions that are going to be taken over by the different teams that are going to provide from components to services to integration services to whatever they are going to do next. They need to have this very clear when those activities are changing hands, and this is only possible because there was a well-done risk assessment at the early beginning, and this is shared and comprehended by the different stakeholders under a coherent framework. So we wanted to highlight that and make sure that people see the need and the importance of this risk comprehension at the very beginning of the concept of such a solution. Okay, we wanted as well on this document to give important security notions of the life cycle. So things that are related to the governance, how this is supposed to be managed, how we can achieve maturity, and more important, to point out and really highlight to everyone that there is a large diversity. There's a lot of different process at place, really a large amount of products that could be seen under this umbrella. So all kinds and types of products, maturity, security levels, everything could be different and very diverse depending on how this system is conceived and ultimately how it's managed, because this is not a static photo. Just to remind you, we're talking about something that will be managed in time. And of course, what is needed from the people that are in front of it to design it, to build it, to commission it, and in the end, to run a mission-specific system that will be there for a very specific purpose. So we wanted to put out those ingredients in the document, give them some thinking, some considerations around security to try to frame what is needed and what is requested from the audience to understand it correctly, okay? Roberto, if you can go to the next slide, please. So we will continue after now you understand what were the drivers and what we wanted to do and the objectives of writing such a document. Jean-Michel is going to show you or to explain you a couple of definitions and explain the life cycle and other security aspects that we as a group combined under this document. So Jean-Michel, the ball is yours.
Yes, Jean-Michel speaking. So good morning, good afternoon to all. So yes, the first step we have made is to discuss about the definition of system. What do we have behind this term? And of course, we have all. Well, we don't have the same definition. I'm sure you have your own definition of what is a system. So the approach we use is to say, okay, let's take a generic definition, and we use in the document the term, the reference from the NASA, which where a system is a combination of elements which collaborate together to produce a capability to meet the need. And we say, okay, this is a starting point, and we will give some example of different system just to illustrate the diversity of the different system. And we use in the document a reference to more an IT side, it's a maritime human resources system. And not another example on industrial control system for water, specifically on water treatment, and also on 5G system. What is important in our reflection was to consider all we can consider the assets which build, I would say, the system, with of course hardware, software, service, data, equipment, communication, network, personnel, process, industrial process, procedure, and so on. So it's a wide scope. Can you shift to the next slide, please? And just also quickly to illustrate one example, I insist, it's one example. I selected the water treatment as an industrial process where you have a spread infrastructure with pumping network, water treatment plant, you have the water distribution network, and so on. And this, for the I would say the high level point of view, or for the global view, you have a lot of assets, including the element for physical security, like fences, pipeline, and you have to ensure the security, the pipeline monitoring, the system, the leakage detection, and facility monitoring, etc. You have IT elements, the ERP servers, the billing, the payment application, etc. Of course, network, IT, OT, and the OT part, I would say the control system with SCADA, PLC, sensor actuators, and all the instrumentation, water tank, or all the needed element to manage your industrial process. And one again, it's an example. There is a lot of other things I don't list here. Can you shift to the next slide? So to enter in a reflection of the group, as Mario said, there is some key points, and specifically on the life cycle of the system. to address the security, of course, we need to address the full life cycle of the system. And you see here in the blue part, from the creation to define the requirement and specification until the end of life of the system, you have to manage at each stage, and you must take into account the different aspects and different requirements, security requirements at different phase. There is also intrinsically the different need and different stakeholder to take into account. You have different stakeholder. I will explain in the next slide. In the creation of the system, in the design and development of in the implementation, integration, and of course in the operation, and of course to not forget the end life and the associated decommission, needed decommission. So one other key point. Sorry, can you go to the previous slides? Thank you. Another key point is it's very important to have a high-level risk assessment at the beginning and to maintain this risk assessment all along the life cycle, all along the lifespan, sorry, of the system, and managing the security of the architecture in order to be able to of course to provide what you want and to be able to maintain the security of your architecture when again all along the lifespan. Of course, it will require a strong security governance in your system, and of course, just taking one again the example of the industrial process, the secure operation is key, and during your operation, and you have to manage a lot of functional updates and evolution because your industrial process will evolve depending on the need, and you have on top of that to address security maintenance with security updates, vulnerability analysis, etc., etc. So I will not enter in the detail, but it's also a very just to show that it's of course a very important phase and associated security measure. Can you shift to the next slide? So also just to select one important concern regarding managing the security of system is you have to manage various stakeholders. So it's a graphic to represent the diversity of the different stakeholders, from the end user, the people who will use the system or the service provided by the system. You have the system owner, of course, who will operate the system, and I would say in between or before, the system owner can use or will use a service provider to help him to define the architecture, to do the integration, to do the maintenance, etc. And of course, using products coming from suppliers, manufacturers, either hardware or software. So all the different assets, network assets, of course. And in this different diversity of stakeholders, the system owner, or to manage the security, you have to, of course, manage the evolving of stakeholder, because in different phase you will have different stakeholder who will work on your system, and you have to manage and collect the different needs and to ensure that you maintain your security all along the lifetime of the system. In addition, there is the evolution of the perimeters, of course, according to the area of responsibility of the different stakeholders. So this is also important to have a clear view of all the stakeholders, their area of responsibility, and to ensure that the risk is, you have a formal transfer of the risk and the responsibility between the stakeholder. I just take a very, very simple example. You have to manage a subsystem where you have different passwords. So the service provider who will do the integration to configure the software, the hardware will use their own password. When you will shift to another stakeholder who will operate the system, you have to be sure that you must modify the password and not use the old one and put a new one. So this is a very simple example just to illustrate the need to have a transfer risk and the consequence for managing the security. Can you shift to the next slide? For I would say system or complex system, you have other factors to consider, and there is, as I said at the beginning, you have to define a secure architecture. You have to manage to ensure your secure design, and it's a challenge by itself because there is a lot of moving parts. One again, I take the example of industrial process. You will evolve your industrial process to do more, to make new products. In your IT system, you will evolve the different service, etc. So you have to ensure that you maintain the security level of during the evolution of your business development. You have to manage the different constraints, lifespan, short term to long term. You have, of course, to manage a mix of legacy system, legacy product, where some part of your system you don't want or you can't make update, or it will be very difficult to make an update. So you have to manage this mix. And in the landscape of security, you have to address the constant evolution of the cybersecurity attacks. And for the human and organization point of view, of course, it will evolve. So you have to address also this. So this is one factor to consider. Of course, very important. Also, to what I said, you have to manage cybersecurity, interoperability, and consistency. So easy, one again, an easy example is you have communication interface, and if you have two assets or two applications communicating, you have to ensure that you have the interoperability first at the functional level, of course, at the communication, but at the security of the communication, but not only data model, etc. With the evolution of the attack, you have to manage the crypto agility of your encryption and your security. And also, again, linked to what I said, with the different stakeholders, the evolution of organization, you have to address as much as possible the consistency of your secure concept of operation to address, to ensure the good service to your user. The third point we highlight in the document is to address this. We have a crossroad of big or several domain expertise. So of course, you have to first, outside of the security, you have to address, for the expert point of view, your process. A water system is not the same than any other IT system or oil and gas or whatever. So you have to take into account. And on top of that, you have to build your cybersecurity expertise adapted to this domain to understand that you must understand all these constraints to adapt the cybersecurity, and of course to reach the highest level you can, taking into account all the different constraints. And on top of that, you have to ensure the requirement of the regulatory landscape, of course, the SLA, and the different intended use and portion environment, which can evolve. So this is three factors we highlight, not only in the document. Can you shift to the next slide? So I will give the floor to Mario to explain some elements regarding the certification consideration about the security of a system. Mario, up to you.
Yes, thank you, Jean-Michel. So, as Jean-Michel explained it, we look into those different problems and different constraints and particularities of each moment of the life cycle. And the group tried to identify everything that was pertinent and more related to that particular moment, either on managing risk, on technical controls, or on related to personnel. So what is actually needed, how those things can be truly coordinated to have something that is streamlined through the entire life cycle. So one of the findings and one of the debates is, of course, there are few frameworks that need to be considered for such a reference. The most common ones are the ones that most people know, which comes from NIST or ISO IEC 27000 and IEC 62443. But one of the things that came out as in the debate was, well, it's very interesting that we can rely on them, but when the more complex the systems are and the more subsystems we face, there is a need to make sure that this can be applied all together in a coordination or independently, depending on the type of subsystem. So we look into this as well to point out what are the benefits of each and how they can work together in a way that answers the claims or the needs for the entire process. So when we look into these different possibilities here, we try to group these pertinent certifications into three major groups just to facilitate this understanding. So we have certifications that can be more interesting at the initial life cycle phase. So this at the very early beginning, when before it's deployed, that will help the asset owner to perform several tasks to make sure that what he has as a design is solid, it's pertinent, and it's going to deliver the value that he expects. And there are things that are there to support, for example, supply chain, to buy capacity at the product level, to make sure that those things can actually have a good match. Okay, and once this is this is built, let's say they have a clear picture what is requested for all the different people's teams and products, you can look into what is more interesting or more relevant once the system is already in production stage. So the needs change in terms of what is really needed. So here there are things that are more related to process and services. There is this notion of security operations, as Jean-Michel was explaining, that you need to rely on people and potentially on personal certifications and all the controls that you may have for background check and this type of things. You have as well problems or maybe interventions that you need to perform related to patch management, vulnerability management. You have as well extensions that you need to perform on your system. So all those things, they have a different group of interesting certifications that could build and could bring this whole together. Because at the end, what we are interested here is on the overall, on the complete life cycle, to make sure that the posture is maintained from the design, from the understanding of the risk until until the commissioning of such structure. So here there is, of course, the third item that we said, which is the governance that needs to be there, overseeing all those processes and providing the right interpretation and right understanding of what is needed, where is needed, and how it's needed, and to make sure that this is understood at all levels of the organization. So we split this in those three groups, and we try to make sure that we have all the relative interesting certifications for them. So we have just put for you a table on this slide that contains some of these interesting topics, like for the risk assessment, the 2705 on the certification of the risk manager. There is the on the architecture and design, you have something that is interesting at IEC 62443/3/3. Then in supply chain, we can look into, and we look into a different capacity that can be provided at a product level. So as a consequence, you have all the EU compatible certification schemes that are very relevant to provide this capacity to the design, and as a consequence to correctly manage it. Then we have things related to the process development, so secure development life cycle, either for products or for systems, but really all the practices that are put in place to manage this correctly and to track this down. We found out that there was something that was really relevant at this point, was the secure integration and commissioning, which is the framework for the system integrator. So the person that actually is going to take out the material and the risk and is going to make sure to deploy the system and to test it and hand it over to the asset owner. So there's a lot for them to really take as an input, and the process for them specifically to manage this, which is very relevant and interesting. And then there are the things related to SecOps, as mentioned before. So there are a few options that we look into it, and we believe it's the type of certification that can help build this maturity, because what we are trying to look into here is how this organization will have the maturity and the capacity to achieve the intended security level of the operation of this particular system. And of course, there are the governance related ones. So on the document, we have listed more. There are, of course, more details on top of it, but it's just for you to have an idea how we were thinking of it. So big groups before operation, once it's in force, and then the governance to make sure that everything's coherent and there is a correct understanding of what's at stake at every stage, and what are the best choices that we can explore to build that maturity. So this is pretty much how this part of this section of our document was constructed. And of course, you can find it on the EXO website for future reference if you wish. Roberto, could you change this slide, please? Okay, so we think it's an interesting thing to at least to share with you what's going to be next. This document has the intention to be just the starting point of this particular domain, as we like to call it. So we wanted to continue to explore several paths. So here we are discussing currently in the group. So to go much further on the how to secure, because this first document has the intention to highlight the points, make sure that there is visibility of the critical aspects, what we believe is important. And now it would be nice if we can at least put some additional information for the reader related to how to do it. So design considerations, how to look into defense in-depth strategy, how to assess some of the supply chain problems, product procurement, capacity at product level, how to deal correctly with service providers, and to maintain the cybersecurity posture. Okay, all these, of course, are coordinated with the governance, which is something that we've been trying to explain since the beginning of the webinar. So those are the ideas that we have currently. We would like as well to have more detail on the security practice for each moment. So make sure that we look into a little further into the process and really list what is relevant for each state and why this is relevant for the reader. And ultimately, if we manage to do all those tasks, we are going to make sure that we have a connection and we connect the dots with the upcoming NIS2 directive. So whoever is going to deal with systems tomorrow can at least find a way out of those processes, out of those certifications, out of this information that we are building on how to answer to the requests coming from the NIS and be more confident on that particular point of the legislation. So we believe there's something very interesting to do, and we are planning to start this somewhere in the second semester. So Roberto will obviously share with you more details on how you can now participate if you wish on the topic. Roberto, you can change the slide. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mario and Jean-Michel, for the excellent presentation. So here we invite the community to download, the copy of your document so that you can find on our website, on the Excel website. So we'll send also the link. We'll share the link with you after the webinar, and also take the opportunity to inform you that we have another document that focuses on the product certification composition that is also available on the Excel website. And then we are working on a follow-up version of this document. So any feedback that you would like to share with us on both documents are very important because of the activities that we have planned in the coming months. So I would like also to take the opportunity to thank the editors and contributors to these two documents that with their expertise have provided important insights and that have been collected in these two reports. Also here, if you like to join EXO, so you can contact us directly, and there are all the different contact details. Before closing the webinar, so we have a couple of questions, but we have one question that I would like to ask Jean-Michel and Mario. So I think that the question is, what are your recommendations to manage the supply chain cybersecurity, product and services to maintaining the level of security certification of your system? Mario, would you like to start to provide some insights?
Sure. So this is one of the topics that we have longly debated, and we have different paths of exploring this particular topic. One of the things that is evident and it becomes reality for every system owner is that you're going to manage probably thousands of different products. And if you have to manage individually each and every certification of each and every product that you are running on your system, it's impossible. It's something that in time will become even more complicated, even if this have a lot of value, especially at supply chain moment where you are acquiring those products. So one of the reflections at the time was that this is something that erodes in time, and all the techniques can be more, let's say, more interesting or more valuable, like for example, these vulnerability management partnership with the different suppliers, or something that allows you to keep track of the different aspects that you need to manage, because the certificate itself is not going to help you protect the product, but actually a good understanding of the risk it's bringing to your system is the key to solve the problem. So the vulnerability assessment in a regular manner and the right notification on time probably will give you better cover So this is one of the exploration paths that we had. Jean-Michel, if you would like to complement or say something else.
Yeah, of course, I fully agree with you. Sorry, I will share my webcam. Yeah, in addition and associated to that, let's start just by the beginning. You need to have, of course, it's written in a lot of documents. You have you need the full list of your assets. This is maybe obvious, but we have a lot of example where when you have a very complex system, you don't have the right image of what you have on your system first. You can complete with the bill of material, but when again the complexity will increase if you have all the detail of the version, the different software version, firmware version, product version, etc. So it will be very complex. So at this time, to address that, okay, we can say it's mandatory to have a tool to manage this complexity, but it will be not enough. And I join your view. It seems that a very good way is to have a very good or an efficient link with your supplier, your provider, in order to have the vulnerability assessment and the notification as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mario and Jean-Michel. So indeed, I mean, it's important, what you shared about the supply chain. Also, as AXO, we are working on a new work stream focusing specifically on recommendation linked to the supply chain. So we hope to provide, these insights and something more also in the next version of the document. I have also another question for you. Also, Mario, you mentioned in the next steps something about the NIS2 directive. And so I have seen to support the NIS2 directive, in particular with respect to recommendations for the security of the system and then also linked with the possible certification aspects for the system as well.
So I think the very first thing that we would like to say is that we welcome the NIS2, of course. We believe this is something that was needed, and we will have an improved level of security with less fracture if this is implemented accordingly to the text that we saw. What we really want is to make sure that this is understood by all the different impacted entities, because the scope is now much larger, and this type of document that could point out what are the needed things to be done and can connect the dots, as I said, can be a valuable guide to some of the entities that are now under the scope that were not really that impacted before. So there will be more people now, and the requirements are there. There are a lot of interesting things. There is a need to react very fast in terms of whenever you have a problem. So there is some particularities that are very, let's say, sensitive, and we need to make sure that at least we point out what we believe it's really key for them, and the document can serve as one potential guide to this.
Thank you so much, Mario. So we have another question. So how do you see business lines and risk owners involved in the whole process of system certification and the whole life cycle? Jean-Michel, would you like to take this question?
Yeah, so as I said, I would say yes, you must involve the different stakeholders regarding this whole process. What I want just to be sure that we have given the correct message. there is no one certification for a magic certification for the whole system, and this is why it's you have to manage the different aspects by the different example given by Mario. So this it's obvious, or it's obvious. No, it's important to involve the different these different people associated to the different aspects you want to address. When again, the complex system is, I would say, a big system is enough complex, and it will be quite impossible to have a certification of the whole system. And then, depending on the risk, first you have to address what is important, and it's also a question of cost. You can't ensure to target the certification of the whole system. So depending on the risk, you must prioritize. And in order to address this evolving landscape, the evolution of your system, you have to involve your different stakeholders to ensure this. So this is very important, and also to find I would say, different solution to ensure the cybersecurity level. This is the final target. The target is not to have certification. So, for instance, there is a notion of compensating control. If you in your system you have certified product or not certified product, or not enough security level for your product, your software, and so on, then it's also part of the architecture to address that, and to isolate your installation, and to, as I said, put compensating control to ensure at the end the whole security level of your asset or your subsystem. And for that, when again, this is a reflection involving the different stakeholders, and to first to target that, and also to maintain all along the lifespan of your system.
Thank you so much, Jean-Michel. So I would like also, thank all the attendees, to this panel. I think that we can conclude here, and then you're welcome also to share your insider questions again. You can reach us directly to the email address secretariat at ecs.org.eu. And also we provide additional information related to the participant of the webinar, but also on our website. And you can join our community. In particular, we have interesting topics that we'll tackle in the next months, as already highlighted by Mario before. And so really welcome you to join EXO and then our journey. So thanks again, Mario and Jean-Michel, for the excellent presentation and then discussion.
Thanks a lot.
I would like to thank also my colleague Sarah Wicks for her support to the webinar. And thank you all for attending the webinar itself. I wish you a nice day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.